I had the Welcome back, everybody, to His Heartbeat, and we're back once again for another great show. And I have brought on Dr. Kate Davis, and she's going to talk to us about detoxing your body and gut health. And I know we do a lot of this, but it's so important because if your body, your physical body, is not well, it has a huge impact on your relationships, your emotions, and even your spiritual life. So, welcome, Dr. Kate. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sue. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, I know you have a story behind all this as we get into about detox. Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got into functional medicine just because of my own experience with really severe constipation and bloating and, food sensitivity issues. And it all started when I was 24. And
Ooh,
I went, 13 days without a single bowel movement, which was awful for anyone who's ever dealt with constipation. I understand the struggle. I understand the pain.
yeah.
But, I was at a point where I was getting sharp pain in my abdomen. I could barely eat any food because I just felt so full and bloated and just miserable. And, I was young, I was healthy, I was a former Division 1 athlete, so I didn't look like someone who would get that sick. So it just didn't make sense for me at the time. And, I did what everyone does. I went to the GI doctor and they said, they gave me two terrible options. They were like, okay, number one, we can give you a drug that has a very common side effect of, permanent facial twitches. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm young and single. I'm going to pass on that one. And then they were like, okay, well, the other option is we can remove your intestines. And so I never went back to that doctor. Luckily,
That's
I was just
crazy.
like, isn't
What
that
were
wild?
what were they diagnosing you as?
Yeah, well, they did a test. They ran a test to see, how food in my stomach, how quickly it took to go into my intestines, and it was extremely delayed. Like it's called a stomach emptying test, and I think I only emptied about 10% instead of, 100% of the contents in about 90 minutes, which is not normal. So they diagnosed me with what's called gastroparesis, and if you break down that word, it just means stomach paralysis. So something was just preventing me from moving food from my stomach into my small intestines and actually digesting it properly. And so that's what they diagnosed me with, which isn't really helpful because my first question as a functional medicine doctor is, well, what's causing the
Yeah.
stomach to not do its job, And they don't really go that far.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, here's drugs or surgery, that'll fix it. And so luckily, like, I was blessed to be able to find a doctor through some people at school who had a background in myofascial release. So he was a massage therapist before he became, a chiropractor. And he did this abdominal work in my abdomen one time. And I left being like, what the heck did I just pay for? Because it felt, if anyone's ever had myofascial work done, it's very gentle, very light. And it didn't really feel like he did much. He needed some
Mm.
organ manipulation. It kind of hurt. And I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. But that night, I swear I lost like 10 pounds. I had like 5 bowel movements when I got home. I felt like a new person. I was like, oh my God, I can go to the bathroom
Wow.
again. And it was, and going from a doctor saying, I'm going to remove your intestines or give you a drug with a terrible side effect to, oh, let me just lightly massage your abdomen and it fixed like most of the problems. That was just crazy to me. I was like, how did this doctor not know to do that, Or at least try that first before
Yeah.
recommending these
They
drastic
don't know.
measures.
That's what's incredible. So many,
Yeah.
I gotta admit, even my own like family doctor is really not in the know of how
Yeah.
food impacts you,
Mm-hmm.
different nutritional things. Explain the no, I can't even think of the word. I do know it. The macrophacial, how do you
Myofascial. Yeah.
myofascial. I do know what
Yeah.
that is because I've learned a lot, but I just couldn't think of
Yeah.
the name. Explain what that is. A lot of
Yeah,
people don't know.
so it's always easy if you're ever unsure about a medical term, just break down the Latin root words. It tells you exactly what it is. So myo means muscle and fascial means fascia. So fascia is when you cook chicken, remember that thin layer of tissue that you pull off of it and
The
throw
little
away?
white, the white
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fascia. So basically, it's this thin tissue that surrounds all your muscles, all your organs. It prevents your muscles from rubbing against each other and creating inflammation and damage. It also isolates parts of the body so infections don't spread, and it keeps your organs in place so that when you move, your liver doesn't just pop to the other side of your body. So it kind of holds everything in place. And it's kind of crazy if you dig into, myofascial work, it's pretty wild that fascia from the top of your head down to your toes is connected by certain points in the body. So it's really fascinating if you're a nerd like me and you love learning about the human body. It's really cool to see like how your jaw tension can actually affect your ankle.
Yeah.
because of all these connections between the fascia and your body. And your body is very smart and it's going to use the least amount of energy for movement. So you'll see that all these fascial lines in the body, they fire together when you move to conserve energy. So just a little extra tidbit there. But doing myofascial work, excuse me, doing myofascial work is basically, especially in the abdomen, you're basically releasing different layers. So there's different layers of fascia in the abdomen. You've got the skin layer, the fat layer, the muscle layer, the organ layer, and you're basically just going through and releasing these little adhesions that get stuck in that fascia and allowing things to move properly. Because in your abdomen, you've got obviously all your internal organs, you've got lymph nodes, tons of lymph nodes. And so there's so much that can get stuck in there, and you can get a lot of inflammation and waste just getting stuck if you have a lot of that myofascial tension in the abdominal wall. And so that's what he was doing is he was basically just gently going in there, releasing some of the tension in there, kind of loosening up some of the fascia around my intestines. And then I was all of a sudden able to go to the bathroom for the first time in 2 weeks without any laxatives or any drugs or anything like that. And
Wow.
so it was just wild. And, from there, I obviously overhauled my diet. I did what everyone does, okay, food is obviously the problem. Got to fix this. And so I went dairy-free, gluten-free, paleo, and as long as I stuck to that super restricted diet, I didn't have any symptoms. But every time I went off of it, all my symptoms would come back. So I was like, okay,
Wow.
I know there's something else going on. I don't know what it is, but if I just have to go the rest of my life without gluten and dairy, I guess that's okay as long as I'm not miserable like I was before. And so I went almost a decade, just being on this super restrictive diet, trying all these gut healing supplements, not really seeing any results. And then I had a really stressful life event happen, and all my symptoms came back, and they were worse than they were when I was
Oh,
24. And
oh,
so,
wow.
because a lot of us know how stress, really affects the gut, really affects your immune system and your whole body. And so it just threw me into I was probably on the verge of an autoimmune disease. I was having random joints swell up for no reason.
Mm,
And luckily, my friend was in town and she was like, Kate, let's do some testing because I'm pretty sure you have parasites or Lyme disease or both because this is
mm.
not normal. And, testing revealed a really big parasite infection. She started me on a really, specific detox protocol. And the second month, I passed a 3 foot long parasite. Like
Get out.
it looked like a small snake. I was like, where the heck is this living in
Oh,
my body? Like,
gross.
it was so big, Sue. I
Oh,
was
it's
just like,
nasty.
how was I alive with this thing in my intestines for who knows how many years? Like, it was just
Oh
wild.
my
And
gosh.
yeah, and after I passed it, I started all of a sudden going to the bathroom 3 to 4 times a day, which I'd never done in my entire life. All my bloating went away. All my symptoms were pretty much 100% gone after the fourth month. And I had hundreds of parasites come out, all different shapes and sizes. I had other stuff going on as well, but that was the biggest infection. Like, I was shocked at
Wow.
how many of these little critters were living in my body. I was like, how is this even possible that I was still alive? And then you just think about like God's design, like, we're very resilient, And so it was just wild. And
How
from
did you
there,
get them out?
using binders and herbs, like things like humic and fulvic acid and mimosa pudica seed is really, really good for gut parasites. But really just, it's important that you do it in a certain order so that you don't mess yourself up, which I know we're gonna chat about. But
Okay.
yeah, after that whole experience, I just started working on all my patients and they started getting great results. And then it just became, full time. And I've helped, hundreds of women just heal from those chronic gut issues since then.
Wow, that's really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us what not to do. Like you're saying on, well, I read it, right? On Instagram, you said you actually did buy into one of those and got hurt from it, or
No, no, people have reached out to me and told
oh,
me
okay, who
that.
have.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me what's going
Yeah,
on
and
with
and the
that.
reason the reason I never became one of those people is because that doctor who fixed me, the one who did the myofascial release in my abdomen, I shadowed him for about a year after that because he was a functional neurologist. He also fixed a lot of brain stuff I had from a previous head injury, which is
Hmm.
a huge trigger for gut issues. And I shadowed him for about a year and a half when I was in school because he was brilliant. And obviously he fixed me, so I wanted to learn everything that he knew. But he told me don't ever jump on a detox. I cannot tell you how many of chiropractic students come in here and I have to fix them because they jumped on a parasite cleanse or a gut cleanse or a liver detox, not knowing what they were doing. So that's why I never did, because that probably would have been my next step if he hadn't told me that. So, but the reason why you don't want to just jump on a parasite cleanse and you really want to get a full picture of how your body's functioning is because there is a certain way that toxins get out of your body. And when you kill off parasites in your body, they release a bunch of toxic waste into your system as kind of a
Oh,
final last breath of, well, if you're going to kill me, I'm just going to leave this behind, you know? And so it's kind of just their last breath of, trying to mess you up on their way out. And so you can actually get what's called a detox reaction or a herxing reaction, if you've ever heard that term before, because if you have a plugged up system that can't get waste out efficiently, if you don't have good gallbladder or good liver, gallbladder, and gut function, if you're not pooping 2 to 3 times a day, if you have leaky gut, if you've got liver, sluggish gallbladder, then what's going to happen is instead of those waste products going out of your body the safe way through your bowel movements, your body is going to try to get rid of them quickly through other organs like your skin, your kidneys, your lungs. So people can end up with flu symptoms or end up going to the ER with gallbladder attacks or ending up with heart palpitations. It really just depends on the person. But I've heard this from so many people who, they read my story on Instagram. They say, oh, I need to do a parasite cleanse, or, oh, yeah, I tried that once and I got really messed up. Can you fix me? And so that's probably, about 10% of the people I work with now are people who tried to detox, didn't understand the concept of, restoring drainage pathways, your body's ability to get waste out before going after these systemic toxins and infections, and then they just ended up messing themselves up. So
mm,
basically think about it as your gut, your gallbladder, and liver. If that's a toilet that's clogged, are you going to choose that toilet to go to the bathroom when you go in there? It's like, no, you're not going to do that because it's going to overflow and create a mess. Same thing happens in your body. If you're not pooping 2 to 3 times a day, or if you have leaky gut or a lot of inflammation in your abdomen, if you've got, gallbladder and liver dysfunction, and you can't detox properly, then it's going to put a lot of stress on your system that can eventually affect other organs if it can't go out the proper way. Does that make sense?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like a lot of these detox methods people see would be like take this drink or do this certain thing
Yeah.
and then you'll be wonderful and they'll interview somebody that it helped or
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is the thing, I think that some people, they just try something and it just happens to be the one thing that fixes them. And they just think it's like a miracle cure for everyone. But you
mm,
also have to remember, like, everyone is so unique. In their internal physiology and how their immune system functions and how their brain functions, how their body is wired. What works for one person is not going to work for everyone. And so it's really just knowing, first of all, healing takes time. So if you ever see like 7-day detox, 2-day detox, or 1 month detox to fix all your gut issues, that's like a red flag. And so, if you're someone who's had chronic issues for a while, it's going to be a process to get you back to full healing. And so, for me, it took 4 months for all my symptoms to go away. Obviously, I was feeling amazing, the second month, but we had to do a lot of drainage support and gut healing for me and gallbladder support in the first month before going after those gut parasites. And then we did it in a certain order. We did gut parasites first, then we went after liver parasites, and then we went after systemic because you've got to go in a certain order of, safely removing the stuff from your body so that you don't have that herxing or detox reaction. So yeah, anything that just says, quick detox, that's probably not going to be the best thing for you. You might be one of those few people who just that's exactly what your body needed and you get better and that's great, but for most people, it's a lot more complex. You've got to understand a full picture of what's going on in the body. And you've also got to make sure there's no co-infections. Like, what if you also have mold toxicity or fungal overgrowth in the gut and you don't ever target that? You could just be going after one infection and ignoring the rest of the picture in your body. And then you might be like, oh, yeah, I felt better initially. And then all my symptoms came back because you didn't look at the full picture. So that's another piece of it too, is
mm.
making sure that you know exactly what's going on in your body so you can remove everything at once and take all that stress off your immune system at the same time so it can come back online and naturally fight this stuff off.
So listening to one episode on his heartbeat is not going to solve everybody's problem. But
Probably not.
what can you tell us to um help us get started or to direct us to where do we begin or what do we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, number one, and what I always tell people is, if you're someone who's struggling with, if you're related to my story and you're like, yeah, I've been dealing with really bad constipation, bloating, acid reflux, whatever the case is, Go to someone who can shortcut the process for you and get testing done. Because if you're not assessing, you're guessing. If you're just jumping on random detox protocols and you don't ever do any testing to see what is going on in your body, you're not going to really know what to target and you're not going to know what to fix. And then understanding that the whole body works together. You can't just look at the gut for gut issues. You've also got to look at the gallbladder, the liver. Do you have any head injuries in the past that could have damaged, the brainstem and created vagus nerve issues? Because that's that nerve that goes from your brain down to your organs, helps with bowel movements and helps your organs function properly. And so that was a big part of my healing journey is I had a huge head injury when I was 18. So this is like, about 5, 6 years before the gut issues started. And I think that's what triggered it because I
Mm.
was so messed up from that head injury. And the doctor who fixed my gut also fixed my brain. And so that was a huge part of like the gut puzzle for me was just fixing that brain gut connection. So it's really looking at the full health history, looking at labs, putting together, blood work plus whatever other testing you get done to check for infections, and really just seeing an overall picture of how your organs are functioning, do you have insulin resistance or blood sugar issues or thyroid issues, and seeing how that changes through that detox process and some lifestyle changes as well. Because if you want to have long-term results, you're going to need to change some of your lifestyle, like getting better quality sleep. Like they over people overestimate how much simple biohacking tricks are going to help them, like cold plunging and red light therapy and all that. And they underestimate the free daily things that you can do every single day to get your health back on track, like going to sleep at a decent time, prioritizing getting 7, 8 hours of sleep a night. Things like grounding, like just putting your feet in the earth outside. I mean, there's so many studies on how it affects your body at a physiological level and reducing inflammation. And it's just so helpful. And watching sunrise and sunset really helps trigger, better sleep cycles so that you can actually get deeper sleep. That's when your body naturally detoxes, is when you're sleeping, your liver, your brain. That's when they get rid of all those toxins. So it's all these simple things that we take for granted that most people won't do, but they'll immediately go, buy a membership at one of these biohacking clinics and think that's going to fix all their issues. And so I'd say, like, number one, I know I touched on a lot of different things, is, get some testing done, work with someone who's going to expedite the process for you and save you a lot of time and money. And then, start with the simple things, the basics. There's a lot of stuff you can start with that's really going to get your health back on track. And chronic stress over a long period of time has been shown in research to create what's called leaky gut, which is where that gut lining kind of breaks down. And now you get toxins and infections slipping into your bloodstream, going systemic. You can also get food sensitivities from that because, if large food particles slip into your bloodstream, your immune system's going to tag them as a foreign invader. And now every time you eat that food, it creates inflammation in your body. And for some people, that's a migraine. For other people, that's constipation and bloating. For someone else, it could be acid reflux. It really depends on the person. But if you really want to heal up that gut lining and get those drainage pathways functioning again and get better gut health, you've got to learn how to regulate stress. And for some people, that's journaling, or, for Christians, praying, meditating on the word, like trusting God and letting go of worries and all that stuff. And there's so many ways to regulate the nervous system. That's something that's a big part of the healing process that I walk people through in the beginning, is like, hey, we've got to get you out of this fight or flight state and down into this rest and digest state so your gut can actually function the way it's supposed to.
So when you say get testing, there's a lot of kinds of testing, right?
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
testing that we can get from our family doctor, general practitioner,
Yeah.
is usually covered by our insurance.
Hmm.
Um, so is that enough? And what do we ask our doctor to do? We'll start there. If
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's not that many tests that a lot of medical doctors will do to give you a lot of these answers, which I know is frustrating because we obviously want our insurance to actually cover the stuff that's going to help us. But unless you find an integrative medical doctor, which they are out there, you're gonna have a hard time finding the right testing. So a lot of this stuff ends up being out of pocket or using HSA or FSA funds to get the testing done because it's just not covered by insurance. So you can go to your family doctor and they do, yearly blood work, which is missing a lot of important things. So, a few things I would always ask your doctor to add on every year to your blood work is fasting insulin. GGT is a good way to see gallbladder dysfunction if it's starting to creep up. They'll also order a HIDA scan if they suspect gallstones or something like that. But It's really, honestly, and I know you've navigated the medical system quite a bit. You know how hard it is to get doctors to order this stuff because if it's not the standard of care, they're much less likely to actually order it. They usually don't order things like HIDA scans or SIBO breath tests or things like that very often unless they see a direct need for it. Like if you're in a full-blown gallbladder attack, that's pretty much when they'll order a HIDA scan. But it's real, I've heard from so many people, I knew I had gallbladder issues. I asked them to order this test and they wouldn't order it. And so you really got to find a good doctor who thinks a little more holistically, um, and who can actually, order the right testing. But even then, blood work's not going to tell you a whole lot. It's not going to show you mold toxins or parasites or anything like that. Even stool tests, which, some MDs will order if they suspect parasites, they usually miss parasites. I had a stool test that was
Really?
negative. Dozens of my patients had stool tests that were negative, and they saw so many parasites come out when we started detoxing. It's very hard to pick up on them in testing. They're very difficult to get. But there is some functional testing, like the gut zoomer test. It doesn't, again, it's not going to pick up parasites very well, but there is one marker in there that can tell you the likelihood of someone having parasites. And then it shows you if you have leaky gut. It shows you, bacterial or fungal overgrowth or viruses, things like that in your body. So it gives you a really good detailed analysis of your gut health. And then there's a total tox burden test that's really helpful to pick up on. It's a urine test to pick up on heavy metals and other, environmental contaminants and chemicals and things like that in your body and mold toxins. And so those are really helpful tests. And then the best one that I found for parasites was actually a hair follicle test. And so that's the one that my friend did on me to find the parasite infection. And I was really skeptical until I saw that 3-footer come out and I was like, oh, this thing is legit. Okay. And because you never think like, oh, a hair test, that's totally going to pick up on that. But it is the gold standard of drug testing. So it makes sense that it could pick up on all these like toxins and things going on in your body. And so that's what I use for most of my patients because they'll come to me and say, oh, I've done multiple stool tests, they're all negative. And then we do the hair follicle test, shows parasites. And then as soon as they start the detox, they see dozens of parasites come out. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good enough for me. And so
So tell
it's
me about a
yeah.
detox. What does that look like?
So detoxing is basically I'm usually working with someone on a 4 to 5 month detox plan. So it's a combination of herbs and binders. And basically the binders go in and they grab the bad stuff and they pull them out, things like
What's a
mold.
binder?
The ones I use are made up the ones I use are made up of humic and fulvic acid. And it's basically just something that goes in the body and grabs toxins and infections and pulls them out safely. And so there's kind of like different tiers of binders. Like you've probably heard of activated charcoal. They use that if someone's really toxic, if they've drank too much and they need to, soak up the alcohol and get out of their system, they'll give them activated charcoal. It only targets the gut and it doesn't really go systemic. So there's a lot better binders out now. Like I know a lot of people have heard of activated charcoal. There's Shilajit, there's, humic and fulvic acid, which I think are the best ones. They can actually go systemic, and there's some companies that have designed them to actually be able to cross the blood-brain barrier and get toxins and infections out of your brain, which is kind of
Oh,
crazy. So
yeah.
yeah, so it's basically just, a mixture of those. And then the herbs are basically there, depending on the herbs you're using, to heal up the gut, to heal up the liver. You can even use things like ox bile or tugka to help support gallbladder function. So really just healing up those drainage pathways, getting your body able to get toxins out, and then going after those systemic infections with, deeper binders that can remove them safely. So that's what detoxing is. It's about 4 to 5 month detox program of herbs and binders and I might put some people on some extra things like gut healing herbs if they need deeper support with leaky gut.
So
But that's basically
are they still eating? Like a lot of times you think of detox is like I don't keep eating my normal food and I'm just taking smoothie, special smoothie every day
oh
or
yeah.
is
Yeah, I think you're thinking of a juice detox. I know that's a
yeah,
really
something
common
like
thing.
that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, where people are like, "Oh, I'm detoxing," and they're on like celery juice or something like that. That can, promote better function in some of the organs, but it's not really a true detox. It's more like a detox is really going in and actually just removing infections and toxins from the body and then using herbs to heal up the organs and get your body back online. Because we know our bodies are designed to heal. It's like it's so easy once it's given the right conditions, but sometimes we just need a little extra help, from those herbs and binders to get us to that point. And then along the way, you've also got to change people's lifestyle. If they're eating, junk food or smoking cigarettes or drinking a lot of alcohol, I've got to work on slowly just like weaning them off of that stuff. And, there's a really great book called Atomic Habits that talks about the best way to actually maintain long-term results. And so I use those principles with the people I work with to really get them off of that stuff and have it not feel like a huge chore because my goal is to make it as easy as possible. I'm not going to do a huge overhaul on someone's diet. There might be certain things that I'll take them off of as they're detoxing. Like if they had a food sensitivity pop up, which basically just means that it's creating an immune system reaction every time they eat that food. I'll have them just stay off of it for a few months while we're healing the gut and getting that leaky gut to heal, so that they're not getting that reaction. And then I really focus on diet and nutrition on the back end. Once we've healed the organs, once we remove the infections and toxins, once they're going to the bathroom again, their symptoms are mostly gone, they're improved in their function overall. Now I'm like, okay, this is where food becomes medicine. Because if you just try to start with diet, and I think this is where my problem was, and you have a really horrible gut lining, like your gut is just completely inflamed, leaky gut, you've wiped out a lot of the good bacteria in your gut lining, you can't really absorb nutrients very well and you can't produce them very well. So anything you're putting in your body, like supplements and good quality food, you're not really absorbing most of it. And so I always tell people you're just kind of creating really expensive pee and really expensive poop. And so my goal is like, let's heal the foundation. Let's rebuild your body's ability to actually digest food, absorb the nutrients, to get your immune system online so that the parasites don't take over and you don't end up with a giant 3-footer in your intestines when you're in your 20s. And then we can focus on, okay, now we've got to clean up our food quality. Now we've got to focus on better quality meat, better quality vegetables, fruits. I teach people about the clean 15 and the dirty dozen in terms of, what fruit to buy organic and what produce, like you need to absolutely get organic if possible. And, just really simple things like that. And then better quality sleep, how to detox your liver naturally using things like castor oil packs or how to do lymphatic drainage, because that's a huge important part of your immune system and of getting waste out of your body. And so I teach them all this stuff as they're doing the detox. And it's really just the combination of both that gets them, the results they need and also gives them all the tools to maintain those results long term.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I do it very slowly and simply though. It's usually not too overwhelming for most people. So I try to just give them 1 to 2 things to focus on. But yeah. Yeah.
So this is the question I always ask all you guys. A lot of the people that help with this, they charge a lot. I mean, they kind of
Mhm.
have to, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like, you see so many people who they are living off of a lower income
Yeah.
and they're not even privy to good health insurance and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so they really suffer. So do you have any suggestions or I mean, even good sleep? Okay, everybody can attain good sleep
Yeah.
from some good habits. Um, cutting out sugar, try to get away from canned foods. Some of these things we've had on the show, those are helpful.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, do you feel like that really does just require that you see somebody who's like a functional medicine doctor or, um,
Yeah. Yeah. Functional medicine, naturopath, integrative medical doctor, we all kind of doing similar stuff. But yeah, and it's unfortunate. Like I wish insurance actually covered this stuff, but unfortunately, they're very drug and surgery motivated. They're not really looking to fix people because I mean, and you can go down the rabbit hole of why that is, but I think a lot of and it's not the doctor's fault. Like they're just taught in
right?
medical school, this is what it is. You diagnose, you give a prescription, or you give a therapy or an intervention or surgery to fix the
Yeah.
problem. I think most doctors genuinely do want to help people. They just, they kind of get stuck in the standard of care, because they can lose their license if they go outside of that, and people don't realize that. And then just, maybe not having the time or energy to learn some of the functional medicine stuff too. But yeah, I wish insurance covered it. Unfortunately, they don't. And a lot of those detox products, the ones that work really well, they are very expensive. So that is definitely a limiting factor for some people. So if I always tell people like if you're not in a place to really work with someone one-on-one, simple things you can start with, like absolutely you got to clean up your diet. That's number one. You've got to prioritize sleep. You've got to learn ways to down regulate your nervous system, calm down the stress, because there's always going to be life events that happen that are outside of our control. But what can you do in the moment to just regulate your nervous system and get it in that rest and digest state and not stuck in the fight or flight? Because that's going to be the biggest thing that wrecks your gut is stress. And it's going to also stress in your immune system. They function like a seesaw. So if you're chronically stressed for a long period of time, your immune system can't function the way it should. And that's when those infections start building in your body and creating issues. So grounding at sunrise or sunset is an easy thing to do, and it's free. Um, if you're someone who deals with constipation, drinking like 16 to 20 ounces of water as soon as you wake up and going for a 10 to 15-minute walk, that works so well just to get people, pooping first thing in the morning. Like I've had so many patients who are like, oh my God, I haven't even started the detox yet, and I'm already going to the bathroom just from doing simple things like that. If you've got digestion issues, squeezing like half a lemon into a glass of water and drinking that about like 30 to 45 minutes before breakfast can really help just stimulate more acid production and help with digestion. Um, and then for food, a lot of people don't realize they say, oh, organic is expensive. You guys, if you start eating whole, real foods, you're not going to eat as much. You're not going to be as hungry because you're getting real nutrients in your body. You're actually going to save money. And a lot of people don't know Walmart is one of the biggest organic retailers in the country. And they have really affordable produce that's organic. So you can go there if you can't afford like farmer's market, or maybe you don't have one in your area. Walmart is a great source of organic produce that's at an affordable price. And then staying in the perimeter of the store. Don't go in the middle of the store. That's where all the junk food is. So, get real meat, real vegetables, try to eat salmon every now and then. It's great for omega 3s. I eat a lot of really lean ground beef or chicken or salmon. And then I eat, vegetables and fruit from the farmer's market. Because in California, we've got a ton of farmer's markets
Yeah,
like
you
every day
do.
of the week. So we're very fortunate out here in that respect. And we have crops year round because we don't get snow. So at least not in Southern California. So we're able to, have access to that. And there's so many companies that can actually ship directly to you. Like, things like Butcher Box, Good Chop. There's so many of those like meat delivery services where if you order in bulk, you'll save a lot more money. And a lot of them are grass fed, grass finished. So it's good quality. There's also, companies that'll ship you fish. If you're more of a seafood person, they'll ship you fresh Atlantic caught salmon and cod, from Alaska. So it's not store-bought, farm-raised, not so good for you kind of fish. And so those are just simple places to start. But one of the best things I teach my patients in terms of regulating your nervous system is if you just do breath work every single day, that is the quickest way to completely change your physiology, to get better oxygen, better blood flow to your brain and your body. And it also, when you actually learn how to breathe through your diaphragm properly, not just belly breathing, it actually massages your internal organs. So you're able to get some of that inflammation and some of that stagnant lymphatic fluid out of there if you're actually breathing through your diaphragm the way you're supposed to. And so a simple breathing exercise that people can start with is box breathing, but you're going to make it more of an exhalation focus, because when you breathe out longer than you breathe in, you actually create better blood flow and better oxygenation to your body. So breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 8, hold for 4, and just set a timer on your phone for 3 to 5 minutes. If you do that every single day, it's just gonna help naturally regulate your nervous system regardless of what's going on in your life. So those are probably the best things that I would start with, but really you've got to clean up your food quality. That's number one. If you're drinking soda, switch to Olipop, switch to Zevia, switch to one of those, fake sodas that has way less sugar in it. And I know they have natural flavors, which isn't the best, but it's a lot better than drinking 50 grams of sugar, each time you grab a soda. So
Good. That's
hopefully
good.
that was helpful and new things that you haven't heard.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we every time we have one of these shows, there's something new that we
Yeah,
hear.
that's good. Yeah.
But I do think there's a lot of myths about detox. And like
Hmm.
you said, often it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna drink, you know, ground up veggie drinks
Yeah.
for 2 weeks and then I'll be healthy. But
Which can actually really mess you up. Like if you're someone, I don't know if you know this or if you've heard this from anyone who's come on your show, but green drinks, they're very, very high in oxalates. They can actually create kidney damage, kidney failure in some cases.
Yeah.
Like there's been, again, it's not to be freaked out that you can never drink green juice, but if you're drinking it every single day for months, it can actually create kidney stones, kidney failure. Most of those kidney stones are made of oxalates. So if you have a really high oxalate diet, it can actually start forming those if you don't have good, if you're already like not super healthy to begin with. But there's been case studies of people ending up in the ER with kidney failure from doing green juice
Ooh.
detoxes. Yeah. So I don't think it's necessarily going to detox your body just drinking straight vegetable or fruit juice. A lot of people might feel better initially just because they're getting off of processed garbage and actually putting real fruit, like real nutrients in their body for the first time. They're like, wow, I feel amazing. And they keep doing it. But oftentimes it's because of them getting off the garbage food. And also you're drinking a liquid. So if you have digestion issues, of course you're going to feel better because there's no digestion that has to take place. So just some things to keep in mind. Like I think juicing can be really powerful and really beneficial, especially if you're doing, like carrot juice with turmeric or ginger because they're very anti-inflammatory. But also like not relying on that as a quick fix for your issues because there's probably a lot of other things going on. Like you might have, some liver dysfunction or some toxins in your body, or maybe your gut is just not, functioning the way it should. Or maybe you need to do some vagus nerve exercises to get that gut functioning again. And for me, that was a huge thing with like the injury I had to my brainstem was that I really had to do a lot of vagus nerve work and really getting that functioning again to actually, help with a lot of the gut and brain issues I was having at the time. So,
Mm. All right. Well, that's a lot. So,
yeah.
do you do all your work one-on-one, or do you have group
Yeah,
work
I
or
do I do only one-on-one right now. Group is like a whole other it's tough. I've talked to well, my thing is as a functional medicine doctor, you want to be as individualized with your care plan as possible. Like every person, I always tell people if you were to line up 10 people I worked with who had constipation issues, they all had completely different care plans because they all had, different physiology, different organ function, different infections, different toxins. I always gear my care plan towards exactly what they're dealing with. When you get into the group setting, I haven't been able to find a way where for me, like morally, ethically, I know I'm going to still give people the same results with a
Mhm.
generic. Because you know what I mean? It's like when you go to group coaching, you have to kind of make it more generic, and then you kind of
Yeah.
lose the whole
Yeah.
healing aspect of the individualized plan. So that's why I haven't done the
Yeah.
group stuff yet. So yeah, but yeah, I do one-on-one coaching with people.
So if somebody comes to you and they're a Christian, how do
Mhm.
you integrate that into your practice with them?
Yeah, well, I love working with Christians because then you can just, openly talk about faith. Like, hey, remember what the Bible says about fear and anxiety and worry and healing and, like all that stuff. And it's cool because when I jump on monthly calls with people, I get to remind them of those verses in the Bible and it really helps them like grow in their faith because they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay, thank you for the reminder. I just need someone to tell me I'm going to be okay. Because it's hard. Like when you've been struggling for years, to have hope and faith that there's going to be something that fixes you, I think is really tough for people. And then just standing on the word of God and just saying, no, like it says, it is finished, by his stripes we are healed. So we're just going to declare that healing over you until it happens. And it's just so cool like having that aspect into the healing process of just getting people to okay, well, what are you doing spiritually? Like are you in the word? I have people write down the verses in the Bible about fear or anxiety or worry and I'm like you need to just look at them every time you feel that throughout the day. And I think that really just helps a lot of people and just knowing and they honestly they heal a lot faster because you have God and they know and there's faith and belief and it's just so cool to see that. So
Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, we find even with our Bible study, we have a Crown of Beauty 12-week women's Bible study, but it goes deep, right? It helps them
Yeah.
begin to understand some of the lies they've been walking in and how to walk in the
Yeah.
truth and replace that lies they believe even about God and when they're stressed,
Hmm.
and brings a lot of freedom and healing, and they can see even healing in their physical bodies.
Yeah.
One thing's come up, it came up again recently, somebody's meeting with this years ago, first time, and this woman was just perpetually sick, just
Mhm.
always serious stuff. And it could be, this was a few years ago, it could be that no one really helped her deal with the real problem, like what
Yeah.
you were saying. And they did those surgeries and they did all those terrible things. Could have been that. But one thing, if sadly, when you're sick, you're not feeling well, then sometimes, depending on your family or whatever, everybody feels sorry and they pay attention to you, right? And
Yeah.
they bring you food and they help you and they, are you okay? And you find that's the person comes every week. You're always praying for some other illness or something. So something we want them to think about is, what do you gain from this?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you actually gain attention, and that's what you need most of all. Is just
Yeah.
knowing that you're loved, that you're important, that you're valued, because you never felt that you were neglected as a child for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And so sometimes coming to those realizations and going, oh my goodness, yeah, no, I don't want my identity to be a sick person. I want
Yeah.
my identity to be a person of worth and value as a
Mm-hmm.
healthy person too.
Yeah.
And even that can bring healing.
Yeah, and that's a tough conversation to have with people too. I mean, you kind of have to like ease into that kind of
Oh
thing with
yeah. Yeah, I
people.
had
Like, I'm not,
been meeting with this
yeah.
person for a while and I'm like, eh. I just feel like the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit kind of opened my eyes to that. And when we talked
Yeah.
it through gently, she really thought, she's like, I think there's something to this, you
Yeah, and I
know.
think it just comes down to exactly what you said of identity issues, right? It's like
Yeah.
a lot of people before they came to Christ, they had a lot of identity stuff, like their identity was in their career or, their performance as an athlete or, and this was like my stuff that I dealt with of just every time I performed poorly, I would just beat myself up because that was my identity instead of realizing that, God created me perfectly, like exactly how he wanted to. He put so many good things inside of me, and I do have worth, and that, my worth is just being a child of God. It's not in performance, it's not in works, it's not in all this. And so, really getting people to understand that, I mean, you've really got to, like you said, like dive deep into the word to really get that healing. And it's a tough one. And a lot of
Yeah.
people really struggle with it. And I think it's just like, being in community is number one, right? And so a lot of those people, like maybe they're just avoiding community and isolating because of the health issues. And so you have to tell them, like, hey, we need to get you some ways to go out. Have you checked out meetups? Do you have small groups at your church? Something you can do to just really be around people and then
Hmm.
opening up and being vulnerable and like really creating those deep connections because that's a huge part of health too. Like people don't
Yeah.
realize your social connections are one of the biggest indicators of how long you'll live. If you don't have like deep, close, few, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, like 2 to 3 or 4 people who you can really rely on, who, if you're having a hard time, you can call them and have them, pray with you and pray for you and just really be there as, a good, solid person who can make you, just hold space for you. That is a huge part of the healing process too. And if you don't have that community, it's really important to start getting it and finding it. And but if you're not vulnerable, it's gonna be really hard to connect with people. And so that's something I struggled with my whole life was not opening up. I would always just crack jokes. Anytime someone wanted to go deep in a conversation, it would make me feel like, "Ooh, like I don't want them to know me?" So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's tough, but once you get to that place where you can really open up and you're vulnerable and you can connect with people, it just changes your life because then you're like, "Oh, I do have all these amazing friends. I just never let them actually help me?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really complicated topic, but I'm glad you brought it up because it's something that a lot of people I think need to hear of just, what are you gaining from this? Because a lot of times some people might just stay stuck in that cycle because of that identity they've wrapped around their
Yeah.
diagnosis, like, oh,
Mhm.
my fibromyalgia and my blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, no, the Bible says what you speak is becomes
Yeah.
real. Like, no, we're not going to
Mm.
speak that. Your words
Mm.
have power. They can create life or death. So why are you saying my fibromyalgia, my IBS? You're just like, no, my doctor diagnosed me with this, but I'm in the process of healing. You don't have to lie to yourself and say, I don't have fibromyalgia and like say affirmations in the mirror. Like, we don't need to do that. We need to be honest because our brain is smarter. It's not going to just believe a lie that you still tell at the mirror, but you're going to say, I'm in the process of finding an answer or healing from this. And I'm not going to
Yeah.
accept this diagnosis because I know God is greater than any diagnosis a doctor could give me. So just simple things like that.
Yeah, that's good. And not identifying yourself. I am a depressed person. I am an anxious person. I am
Yep.
a sick person. I am,
Yeah.
for years I called I am a cleft palate, even though I never was a cleft palate. I had one.
Yeah.
But you get this. sense of this is who I am. And then, like you said, that impacts the healing process. So I
Hmm.
think as we go, not, I am an anxious person, can say, I'm working through anxiety issues right now, and I believe God will heal me, so
Yeah, yeah, it's so hard too because when you've been in it for years or maybe
mhm.
even decades, it's so hard to believe that healing is actually possible. And like,
Yeah.
it's not that we're, minimizing what people are going through. Like, I've gone through some really crazy health stuff in my life. Like, this is just one example of the gut stuff, but like, I've had so many crazy things happen. And, I'm still working through one of them right now. And it's just a daily thing where you have to just rewire your brain. You have to like rewire it with prayer, with, talking to friends. If you're not feeling like you can really pray that day and just being like, hey, I'm really struggling. Can you pray for me? And having friends who are just going to be real with you and not just let you wallow and say, no, no, no. We're gonna stand on the word of God. We're not gonna wallow and say, woe is me, and I love you, but we're not gonna do that. And just really having people who can lift you up. Like it's a biblical principle is, where two or
Yeah.
more, like, it's the I'm totally forgetting the
Two
verses,
or
but
more gathered,
well,
here I
not
am
that
in
one.
their
It's
midst.
yeah, well, yeah, that's a good one too. But the other one where it's like, woe to the person who doesn't have anyone to pick them up. But the
Oh,
one who does have someone to pick them up is gonna
okay.
have a good I'm totally forgetting where it is. Anyways,
It might be a
uh,
proverb. I'm not
yeah, I think
sure.
it's one of the Proverbs.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
sounds
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
well,
uh, but yeah, it's so important to just have that community.
hmm. Well, and with that, this is great. If they'd like to get a hold of you, do you have a website? Do you have a contact, Instagram,
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to reach me is going to be Instagram. So it's at Dr. Kate Davis. So DrKateDavis. And then if you just go on there, you guys, if you're someone who's just like, I don't even know where to start in the gut healing process, I've got hundreds of videos and posts on there that are really going to help you guys out. So go check those out. I've also got a podcast called Unconventional Medicine. It's very new, but I've got some episodes on there to kind of help you guys in the gut healing process and just learning about labs and what labs to order and some of the stuff we touched on in this episode. And then my website is just drkatedavis.com/home. I still haven't been able to figure out how to redirect it to drkatedavis.com. So technologically challenged here, but that's
Wait,
the
say it again.
website.
drkatedavis.com.
Davis.com/home because I don't know how to redirect it to the homepage. So here we are.
Okay, okay.
I know. I'm very good at the human body, not good at technology. And then if you're someone who's, maybe has been looking for someone to help you and you're like ready to start with someone working one-on-one, if you actually DM me the word 100 or the number 100 on Instagram, I'll give you $100 off an initial consult plus labs package. So if you really want to just get started and, really digging into your health history and getting some testing done to show, what organs are dysfunctional, what infections are in your body, what toxins are in your body, and get on a really individualized care plan and work with someone in that process, then you can just go ahead and DM me, get that $100 discount. Again, my Instagram is at Dr. Kate Davis. And just know, like, healing is possible. I just don't want anyone listening to lose hope. I've seen so many things in my life heal that I didn't even think were possible. And it's just so cool just to see that transformation in yourself and just have that faith and that hope for other people. And so if you've been to multiple doctors, if you're struggling, if you're, wondering if anything is ever going to help you, just keep looking. Don't give up on finding someone, whether it's me or someone else, like just find someone who can really help you with that process. And, if you can't work with someone one-on-one right now, just, start with all the free education on my Instagram. There's so much free education online now. Just start learning about the human body and like really just, taking control of your health a little bit.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming that you do virtual help
Yes. Yeah, I work with
and
people all over the country, except
okay.
New York, because New York makes it impossible to send labs, which I know is unfortunate, but
Ah, well,
um, they blocked most lab companies from shipping from outside providers. I don't know why they did that. So, but yeah, I work with people all over the world, all over the country. So yeah, as long as I can ship labs to you, then we're good.
okay, I love it. All right, thank you so much, Kate. Really appreciate it. And I know this has been helpful to all of us, so you've been a blessing. So keep it up.
Oh,
Keep up
well,
the good
thank
work.
you. Thank you for having me, Sue. It was really great chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, y'all share this with others. Even these resources, look into it. Check out her podcast, Unconventional Medicine, and go on her website, Instagram, and Dr. Kate Davis. Awesome. Thanks so much, Kate.
Thank
Have a great
you.
week. Have a
You
great
too.
week, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week.